Hi folks, this is Meredith from the Papery Craftery, and today we're going to be making a quick Valentine's Day craft. We're going to be making Cupid's hearts, or hearts with an arrow going through them. So the paper I'm using today is all 1/8 inch wide. I have that light pink for the main color of my heart. I have a raspberry color and a crimson color for parts of my arrow. The stick of my arrow, the main part, is going to be this gray color. And then I'm going to do a little outline of my heart in white and black just to make it pop a little bit. If you're following along, you might want to grab a ruler. I just got this one from quilt making because it was the closest thing I could find. You can use any quilling tool you like. I'm going to be using my needle tool as usual, but a slotted tool will work fine for this project. If you need tweezers for small pieces, grab that. Small scissors will be handy. I'm just going to be using my Elmer's glue all, but you can also grab some tacky glue if you'd like. And then I would strongly recommend getting a cork board or something to use pins on just to keep everything together. First thing I'm going to be doing is making the shaft of the arrow. And obviously you could use a brown color, which would probably be more traditional, but I didn't want too much of a contrast for this project, so I'm going with this pale gray. And I'm going to make it nice and thick. So I'm going to start off like I do often, making a double thick strip. And if you're new here, that just means folding a long piece of quilling paper in half. This one's 18 inches. And applying a thin line of glue from the halfway mark all the way down to one of the ends, making sure there's no gaps because that would give an air bubble. Then I fold it over and zip it on through my fingers just to make sure that that glue gets spread out nice and even and everything lies nice and flat as it's drying. But now I want this to be even thicker. So off camera, after this dries, I'm going to fold it in half and do it again exactly the same way, and that's going to give me 4 strips of paper all together, nice and solid. If you have thicker paper like a cardstock, you can absolutely use that. You don't have to do that step. While that all dries, we're going to go ahead and start making the main body of our heart. And for that, I am using 2 strips of this Quilt Creations. I think it is, I'm going to get the color wrong. It's either light pink or pale pink, but I will definitely link it in the description box like I always do for all the supplies I use. And to make hearts in quilling paper is very, very simple and very common. All you're going to do is just roll it from end to end, and I'm using the entire strip here. If you need to take it off with your tool to roll it by hand, that is always okay. Put the tail here just a little bit more, and I'm going to turn this into a teardrop. So all that means is letting it open up a ways in my hands, trying to keep that center eye right in the middle, holding that in the center and giving it a good pinch on the side. If you prefer to glue down your tail and then pinch, you are welcome to. I normally do that when it's not a teardrop shape, but for teardrops I kind of like to do the pinching first. Just a personal preference, but it works either way. And then you're going to do the same exact thing with the other half. That's going to give you the 2 halves of your heart. Here is my second half, and you can see they are about the same size because I used about the same length of paper and let them open up about the same amount. I'm going to grab my cork board and I'm going to turn these 2 into the heart shape. If you don't want to use pins for this, you don't have to. I like my hearts to be nice and tight, so I tend to use pins to hold them together. I'm just putting some glue along one edge. And another personal preference that I like to do when I make hearts is keep the folds of the quilling paper facing each other, if that makes sense. So they're kind of mirror images of each other. And then heart shapes kind of like to open up at the point. So I'm going to pin those together real tight. And then I think because I was fighting with my pins here, I let the glue dry a little bit too much. I'm going to end up putting a tiny bit more glue right at the top there as well. I feel like it dried a little bit more than I want it to. And I like my top of my heart to be nice and tight as well. So I really pinch those pretty high up. That's just the shape I like. If you like your heart to be a little bit more open, you can not worry as much about that. So I'm gonna let that dry. And then after a few minutes, I can go ahead and take my pins out carefully. I'm holding my heart down so that my pins don't grab any layers as I'm taking them out. And I have a piece of white, a piece of black, and a piece of that same pink. I'm going to wrap the outside edge of my heart a few times with each color, just to sort of give it a more finished look. I've been doing this black and white wrapping lately, and I just really like how it looks on certain pieces. To start with, I have a piece of the white paper. It's the same width, 1/8 inch wide. I tore off one edge to make a nice smooth place for it to lay down. And I have started at the inner peak of the top of the heart because it kind of hides the end really well. Let that dry for a couple of seconds, and then I apply a little bit of glue, and I'm just wrapping that around nice and tight. I want it to really stay along the edge of the heart. I don't want any air gaps or bubbles or anything. And you can notice I'm keeping my needle tool handy because sometimes you can really use that to sort of rub the paper on in tight places that you can't reach. It's helpful to kind of have that around. When I get to the bottom, I give it a pinch to keep that point nice and sharp, and then continue on with a little bit of glue around the other side. Back up the other curve, and I'm going to wrap this twice with the white paper. But I want to keep that shape nice and tight. So I have my tool here and I'm pushing in with the point and kind of rubbing a little bit just to get a nice deep V in that center heart and keep that shape the way I want it. And then I'm just going to keep going around again in the same way. A little bit of glue, press it down, get it nice and smooth, pinch over the bottom to keep that shape, and then a little bit more glue again to get us back up to the top. And you can keep going with this if you want a thicker line, by all means. I'm just doing two. I'm going to be doing two of each color, the white and then the black and then the pale pink, to kind of finish it off again. And how I like to end it is get back up to the top again, push it in just like I did before. There's no glue on the very end of this just yet. That gives me a line, and I snip it right at that line because I know that line is right in the center of that heart. Like I said, that kind of dip hides the end really well. So now I can apply some glue and press that in, and it's going to be right at the end. So you're not going to see where the paper starts and stops. And again, the needle tool is great for getting in that tight little space. So there it is, wrapped in white. Like I said, feel free to stop there. I am now showing how I wrapped it with the black. Same exact process for the white. And then after I finish the black, I'm going to do 2 layers of the pink. And then my heart is going to be ready to go. And just to jump ahead here to the finished heart, there it is with the 3 layers of different colors, 2 layers of each. I just like the way it looks. I like the outline. I think it gives it almost sort of a cartoony quality and just really makes it pop a little bit more. Feel free to skip all that part if you want to. That is totally fine. Now we're going to go ahead and start making the parts of the arrow. We already have the stick part that is still drying from the beginning. And for the pointy part, I'm going to be using 2 3-inch strips of this red paper, and I'm going to be turning those into a heart shape exactly the same way as we did the pale pink from the beginning, just much smaller. So just like before, wrap it up from end to end let it open up a little bit, and then either pinch right away and then glue it down, or glue the tail and then pinch. Totally your call either way, but we want to do both pieces the same exact way. Sometimes when you pinch and then glue, you're going to end up with a little bit of a longer piece that's kind of sticking off the end. Just snip that off. It's not going to mess anything up too much at all. Just get rid of it. And then we're going to do the other piece as well, just like before. Roll it up all the way and open it up to make your teardrop. And like I said, this is going to be the point of our arrow. It's going to be kind of an inverted heart shape, just to keep tying in the Valentine's Day and the Cupid, keep it in the heart theme. Okay, so there's our two little hearts. And this one has a little extra bit on the end as well. So let's snip that, toss that aside, and there we have our two pieces. And now we're going to make what is the feathery part of the arrow. So move that up there. So now I have, it is a color called raspberry, and I'm making, again, 3-inch strips. You're going to need 4 of those all together for each arrow. I'm just going to demonstrate with 2 here. And this time we're going to make a slightly different shape. We're making a curved marquee. So that, again, roll it up from end to end. And this is a very small piece, so it's sort of hard to see what we're doing here. So I'm sort of making a variation of the way I would make a curved marquee in a bigger shape. I'm just smushing it down the middle, gluing down the tail, and then the idea of the curved marquee is you pinch both sides and you make an S by pushing down on one part and pushing up on the other. Because this is so small, I kind of did that little mini pinch in the beginning. I've just, for some reason, was dropping them a lot when I wasn't doing that. So you end up with a curved marquee in the end. So we're going to demonstrate that again, just because these pieces are so small, it's sort of hard to see. Roll it up all the way. And this time we're going to go ahead and do it more the proper way. So glue down the end first. And that one didn't want to stay really well, so let's just get that rubbed in. There we go. And now we're going to pinch top to bottom, pinch the sides, that's the marquee shape, and then bending one end up, one end down at the same time gives us an S shape. That's our curved marquee. Now, in order to make the feathery shape, we're kind of stacking these, kind of shingling them one on top of the other. A little bit of closer look here, because these pieces are so teensy. And apply some glue along one end of one, and then they really only fit together and sandwich together one way. And it's not going to be like they're directly on top of each other. One is going to go to the side. Like I said, they're sort of shingled. That is what we're looking for, is kind of that shape right there. That is going to be one side of the feathery bit. So we're going to need to do that whole thing twice with the same size strip papers in order to get the other side of the feathery bits. So there's our 2. There's our arrow stick, our shaft. There is the 2 small pieces of the heart for the point of our arrow. And then we have our main heart as well. So we have all our pieces together. And this gray piece is obviously way too long for the arrow for this size heart. So we are going to trim it down, and I would recommend trimming it a little bit longer than you're going to need, just to be able to hold on to it a little bit better. So I'm going to cut a strip that's about 1 inch long off and just put a little bit of glue along one end, and I'm going to put half of my little red heart piece on so that the point is right at the end of the little strip. You can use tacky glue for this part as well if you would like to not have to hold it for a couple of seconds. That is okay. or you can just put it on your cork board and get it all lined up that way. I'm just trying to hold it close to the camera here so we can get a good visual. Once that's set for a couple seconds, I can apply some glue to the other side and put the other piece of that little heart shape on. And you can see there it's starting to definitely come together to look like a bit of a heart-shaped arrow. So let's get that guy down there to dry all the way. Just press on it to make sure everybody's level as they dry. Now we are going to use the feathery bits and make the other half of the arrow. This arrow is going through the heart, so that's why we're doing it in two pieces. We're not making one solid long arrow, which you could use this technique for doing that as well. That's just not what we're doing in this project. So just like before, I am putting a little bit of glue on about a 1-inch strip of this gray and putting my feather pieces on so that they are kind of going down and away. And again, they really only line up in one direction on this after they're glued together. It's only going to look right one way. So if you are concerned you're putting it in the wrong direction, it looks weird, flip it over because it might just be put on in the opposite way. I'm going to give everybody a few minutes to really set there, and then we can put all the pieces of our Cupid's heart together. So it's been a couple of minutes. Everybody is nice and dry. We're going to go ahead and put everybody together. We're going to trim down these two pieces of our arrow because you can see they are definitely a little bit too big there. But I also wanted to show another little trick. If you feel like it's going to be tricky for your two ends of your arrow to line up straight as they're going through your heart, which I was having a hard time doing, I would recommend using a ruler, drawing a nice straight line on a little scrap of paper, tucking it under your parchment or your plastic sheet or whatever you use on your cork board that's a non-stick surface. Then it gives you a nice straight guide to where you can put the two pieces of your arrow. You can do it at an angle if you want it to kind of be shooting sideways, up through the heart or down or whatever angle you want. You just turn your heart. For this demonstration, we're going to be aiming for straight through the center. So I'm gonna use some pins just to keep my heart exactly where I want it, just to make sure it's not wiggling around as the pieces of the arrow get dried on there, because I know I would, as soon as I get my arrow glued, I'm gonna knock my heart out of the way and things are gonna go flying. So let's get that nice and secure first. And now we're gonna go ahead and trim down the pieces of our heart. I've done this a few times now, so I know exactly how short I want my ends. If this was my first time and this is what I did when I was doing it in practice, make it longer than you need and just trim a little bit as you go and line it up and see what you think. I'm going for about a 1/2 inch of arrow after my little feathers and after my heart piece, which is about that long. I'm still using the Elmer's glue for this. I would recommend using tacky glue instead. It'll just make you feel a little bit more secure as you are gluing this down, because it'll be staying in place a little bit easier and a little bit faster. So you don't have to worry about bumping your table or them moving as you're moving your hands. But there you go. I got my arrows lined up on my straight lines, so I know that they are fairly straight, and they will be after they dry. And here is a couple finished pieces. This is one that I did at an angle, so I turned my heart a little bit, and this one is more straight through. But you can see they're just a cute little Valentine's Day accent. So add them to your cards or little gift tags or whatever you think. You can change up the color, you can change up the size. Just use the basic technique and you will be okay. If you have any questions about the tools and supplies I used for this project, you'll find a list in the description box for this video. I'll also leave there a link to my Valentine's Day Quilling craft playlist where you'll see a bunch of other projects. And there'll also be a link to my Buy Me a Coffee page where you can find ways to support the channel, get some quilling extras. It's always greatly appreciated and definitely helps the channel keep growing so I can keep making these videos and coming up with new craft ideas for you. As always, leave any questions you have in the comment section. I'll get back to them as soon as I can. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you can be around for the next video, and I'll see you then. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.